Afternoon. My name's Derek Jamieson. I'm going to start making sure can everybody that's listening hear me. All good? Excellent. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a sort of brief overview of carbon management reduction plans and how we go about that, and then in a couple of case studies, just to put it in real term context. First question you're going to ask is why? Why do I care about carbon reduction? And the simplest and most direct answer is because they're making you. The UK government has set a legally binding net zero target of 2050. And the devolved administrations, Scotland specifically, I'm going to talk about here, is more ambitious. They have their binding target of 2045. And then there's some non-binding targets as well, such as around our power system. So the national grid and how we generate electricity and all this sort of stuff by 2035. There is a big important. There's a key seen as a key importance. The electricity generation aspect of it. That's we're going to be moving more towards more uh, electrical system, like electric heating instead of gas and all this sort of stuff. So electricity is seen as a big important key part of this. Um, the North Sea transition deal is I'll go into that more later on, but it's relevant here, so I'm mentioning it. And that's about specifically the North Sea and how we're going to decarbonize that basin. But it's not just the the stick. There are also some carrots that will um, help you care. First, financial reasons are a main driver for most businesses, surprising no one. Um, so if you can generate your own electricity or heating on site, you don't need to pay someone else to give it to you. And then if you over generate, you can then sell the surplus. So plenty of financial incentives there. Um, and then there's sort of marketing, human factor of it all. 45%, I've seen between 45 and 60%. I think it depends on whether you're counting Chinese companies or not. But 45% of global large companies have net zero reduction targets or policies, and they, as part of that, with your scope three upstream and downstream emissions, will want to work with other companies that have net zero policies and are decarbonizing themselves. So you'll sort of help yourself be more open to more different working with more different companies if you are decarbonizing or have a plan to. And then, as well as collaborations with other companies and sub vendors and contractors, there's also the clients. It's increasingly important to customers to decarbonize and to be as ethical with it as they can. And then finally, public health. If you're spewing less emissions and horrible stuff in the atmosphere and air will be better for everyone to breathe. Health improves. It's nice and step by step. So the North Sea transition deal, as I mentioned, it was set up in 2021 under the Johnson government, and it's overseen by the North Sea Transition Authority. Agreement between the government and industry about how we're going to decarbonise the North Sea, and it can provide there's financial incentives, investment. It's supposed to support 40,000 jobs in this transition. I saw an article that came out this morning saying that in 2024, the North Sea is decarbonized by a further 7% over the last 12 months for a total of 34% since 2018. So we've already smashed both the 2025 and the 2027 targets that have been set. We're definitely on course for the 2030 target of 50% relative to this 2018 baseline. However, after that, there's a 2040 target of 90%, and then the 2015 net zero target. That's going to be harder. There's going to need to be financial investment to unlock more of that. We've done the low hanging fruit, the easy stuff. There's going to need to be more investment there. But fortunately, the this deal between the government should provide some investments for that. So, carbon management and reduction planning. We've sort of preambled into the main guts of it now. First, you assess what you've got. You've got to baseline it, see where you're at before you can do anything else. It's the first stage. It's all collecting data and trying to plan it, and then you get once you know what your carbon is coming from, how you're generating it, you can begin to look at, okay, where's the best places to reduce it? What's most effective? And right, you've got your, all right, here's what we're starting with. Here's how we're generating it. And then if you don't do anything with that, what was the point? I say CMRP, and the most important letter in that is the P, the plan. Because if you're not going to do anything with the data, it's pointless. It's an exercise. So you need to you take that data to come up with a plan about how you're going to do a sort of phased approach to decarbonization, and the best order to do things, making sure that you're not trying to do all the capex up front, and spread it out, and also tie it in with, say, if you're doing other improvement works. So sort of putting the plan in is the important part. There we go. So a CMRP should be specific to your business, to your company. It's all unique. So just because one rig's not the same as another, one company is not the same as another. You might think, oh, decarbonization planning, I've already built my thing. What am I going to do with it now? Well, while yes, there are some things that you do up front, you can decarbonize throughout the life of an asset, of a company, of any kind of infrastructure. You can baseline throughout. You can always assess and review what you're generating, what you're consuming, the energy you're consuming, the emissions you're generating, and always form a plan from that. You should never just be like one and done, stop. It's a consistent, ongoing process. Low carbon engineering, that is, I know it's an ongoing process, but the next two are earlier on. Low carbon engineering is the design of it. So if you are looking at, if there's two different ways to do things, factor in which one's going to produce less carbon, both to create and to continue. Carbon conscious construction. That's when you're constructing. You need to choose a material for your pipe. So, should I choose titanium, or can I get away with 316? That's your first important thing is you don't want all your stuff corroding out of your pipe. But then you've got the secondary consideration. You've got cost. You've got like the delivery times, and that's when you can also consider carbon in the manufacture of it. Maybe you could get it cheapest from the States and they'll deliver it straight away, or you could get it from Wales but it'll take a week, and you're like, okay, it's easy, it's half and half. Well, the one coming from Wales will be lower carbon. There's less logistics to get it where you're going. There was my colleague Sophie at the front here told me, give me some info this week about LPG. We get LPG. The UK gets LPG from various different countries. We get it in here. We create it ourselves. Let's get it from Norway. The worst place that we currently get it from is Peru, and there's several different reasons why, for carbon purposes, Peru is so bad. The obvious one being logistically getting it halfway across the planet, but they also have poorer safety. They have less efficient technologies, so it's 4.5 times more carbon is generated getting the same amount of LPG from Peru as it would be if we got it just here homegrown. So that sort of carbon considerations factoring into your procurement there. Whereas green modifications onwards, that can be done to sort of, well, it's more suited to existing assets. Um, you can, you're looking specifically for modifications to make for your for existing assets. Do you want to put in heat recovery? Do you want to, this sort of stuff? And we'll get into specific examples of that in the case studies, so I won't belabor it too long. Late life extensions, that's when you're shifting your focus from an asset that you're going to see continuing for 20 years to something that's maybe 2 years away from. Like you don't want to start installing infrastructure that with paybacks of 5+ years if you're going to run it for two. So you don't want to do infrastructure stuff there. That's you're going to be switching out lights and things like that. And then carbon conscious decommissioning, obviously, is at the very end when you are taking it apart. And that's a process in and of itself. The picture doesn't really tell you anything new. It's what I mentioned in the last slide, but I liked it because it's got the oil rig in the middle of it. But specifically for oil and gas and the North Sea, so decarboning, you can cover any industry, any sort of plant, but specific for oil and gas, these are some of the major measures that are frequently used or are being eyed up as being key. So the electrification of platforms, improving flaring and venting standards to prevent nasties getting into the atmosphere, decommissioning obsolete offshore ones. Just sometimes you just need to cut your losses and wrap things up. And then most excitingly, emerging technologies, carbon capture, offshore wind, hydrogen, and sort of leveraging the existing expertise we have in the oil and gas industry towards these adjacent sort of industries. I mean, if you've already taken all the natural gas out the well, what are you going to do with the well? Well, you could cap it up, or you could put your carbon in there. It's people are excited about carbon capture for a reason. It makes sense. It's somewhat simple as well. Case studies. So well safe. We did a CMRP for well safe a couple of years ago. So they have 3 offshore vessels, and then there's their onshore headquarters. I remember the day 4 of my colleagues got dressed up in their boiler suits and got into their hard hats, and got into a car together and drove up to Inverness to visit one of the docked vessels there. They got a tour around, which is probably where the photos are from. So they are in Cromarty Bay up near Inverness is where they dock, and that is important later. So for well safe, they wanted to reduce their emissions in 5 years. And then the steps, as we did for the CMRP, it's just you baseline your emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3. Then you investigate which options would be suited for decarbonising this specific asset before moving on to coming up with a plan using the best options and the best sequence of options, and you come up with 10, 15 years worth of, all right, that's how we're going to do it, that's how we're going to grow it, that's how it's going to tie in with all our other plans for growth. So looking at their baseline emissions, 2/3 of it scope 1, 1/3 of it scope 3. Scope 2 is the electricity in the office, which you can see is dwarfed by all of their vessel emissions. So following the site visit and the review, 25 different options were analysed and suggested. They've been split up here for short, medium, sort of long-term kind of options to pursue. Because some, like say, where are we at? Culture change. That's something you can do immediately and cheaply. Just as long as your staff are happy following the the changes, then you don't really need you don't need capex in that. Uh, let's see. So we got a load reduction opportunity survey is basically the same as a CMRP, but you're looking at the electricity load. You're trying to reduce that as much as possible, especially base load consumption. So if you can remove inefficiencies, it just means you don't have to create as large generation infrastructure, and so that saves you money. So you always do your efficiencies first, which it seems simple. So selective catalytic reduction. So that one's not about removing carbon specifically. It's not about CO2 emissions. That's about not NOx emissions. So you put in a catalyst into the flare exhaust, and you put a reacting agent in before it that'll stick to the catalyst, pulls the NOx out of it, and just turns it into more harmless nitrogen and water. So it's not all about carbon, but that one's about NOx. Electrical motor improvements. These all things, they all have a unlimited lifespan. And it's not just about, all right, that's the oldest one, we'll replace that one next. Maybe that one gets used 2 days a year, and the next oldest one gets used 300 days. So you wanna start with the 300. So it's not just being very simple. It's assessing how it all works together, and a better way of being effective with your choices, because nobody has unlimited money. You need to prioritize. And heat recovery, power factor. There's plenty of different options here. I think I'll point out sustainable marine fuel. One of the largest emissions sources that WellSafe had was their marine fuel usage. So taking the one change, finding a similar fuel that could do the same job that you need it to do, but being a bit more efficient and not having the carbon emissions, will have a huge impact. It's like when you're doing your mortgage, you overpay at the beginning, and it will, exponentially reduce how much you're doing it. I'm not paying off my mortgage right now. So import electrification. This is why I mentioned Cromarty Bay earlier. I know it says 5+ years here for the import electrification. That's for when the vessels are moored and powering them from the shore. But Cromarty Bay is not equipped to do that yet, so that's a slightly pie in the sky one. But you could dock elsewhere where that is, like Barrow and Furness. There are places there that you can moor your ships and power them from the shore, and that would be, you do that because the generation that you've got on the vessels would be less efficient. So if you've got your rattle generator on your vessel, you can turn it off while you import. That's just the rationale behind that one. And then there are, as you can see, some office-based improvements, and they're so small compared to the vessel ones that they're. See from the chart on the left, the only chart on the page, through the carbon management reduction plan, could you reduce the projected carbon emissions by about 30%, like 4,000 tons, and a 20% reduction in NOx. And that's just spread out over 10 years, or less than 10 years there. And as you can see, it sort of steps down because it's phased. You're not doing the capital investment all at once, and it will help avoid a big hit to your balance sheet. I've got a lovely quote from WellSafe there saying how happy they were, which okay. And it gave them this roadmap to continue how they wanted to decarbonize. Then BP Clare is the other case study I'll go through here, and that was about an offshore, this offshore platform here, off Shetland. and that was sort of a tester one on just starting with the one asset. Um, so there's a great number of different emission sources, but the biggest ones are the three turbines and the flare. As you can see in the pie chart here. 90, unlike the well-safe emission totals, 96% of this is scope one. They don't have a lot of support or scope three stuff for this. I mean, yeah, supply chain getting to it is um, that. So there was less options identified from the plan for this. It's got the 8. But as you can see, there's some consistent recurring ones like electrical load assessment, LED lighting replacement, electrification again, but because this is offshore, you're going to need to find a different way of doing it rather than just plugging it into the port. So that was suggested with offshore wind. Now, the offshore wind, these are not going to be the great big turbines that you see off the coast. These are going to be, little turbines, maybe my height, that you can stick in sort of remote corners of the rig. Because try to stick a big one on it, you're going to have helicopter crashes and non-safety. So it's just going to be little ones there. And you've got the sustainable fuel. So the bottom one here is support vessels. So that's sort of scope 3 and making them more efficient. And because BP is such a big player, they can sort of nudge their contractors and supporting companies to follow through with their own decarbonisation to improve the whole supply chain. It's sort of, as mentioned before, the decarbonising companies want to work with other decarbonising companies. And this saw a great reduction in NOx from that also has a selective catalytic retrofit there. That saw NOx come down by as much as 90%. It's big saving from that, and whereas in the 60% for the carbon. So if they follow through with the plan, there are great opportunities for reducing their carbon, and that's probably why we're so far ahead of the North Sea deal targets, because you can do a lot with a little, and so we've got, again, a little step down timeline projection there, but the carbon came down, so from 16 kilograms CO2 down to 11 just with the catalytic and the VRU, and then all the way down with the electrification. That's a big contributing factor to do that. So, and our management reduction plan and that assessment turned out to be within 2% of an internal assessment that BP did. So happy with that. And as with WellSafe, this then enables BP to just look for, right, where else can we do this on our other assets? How can we take this forward? What's replicable? There we are. Yes, that was the final slide. If I thought that was sort of a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I'm slightly dehydrated now, but I'm happy to answer any questions. If I don't know anything offhand, I will consult the report and can
Thank you.
sit with you afterwards.
Thank you.